Hey guys, I just wanted to come on here and do kind of a fun little analysis video. So I went and took Louise Forsley's clinic just before TKO in 2025, and we came out into this like rock bed area with this weird off-camber log. She wanted to get me to work on my double blips, and I'm definitely still figuring it out. I thought that this might be a cool video to show you how I approach learning, as well as kind of give you an introduction for how you can take this information and apply it to your own learning, your own practice sessions, and go forward from there. So let's get into it. So this is the specific log in question. You can see that it's on a side hill, so the log is running downhill and the entry is angled between two trees, and you can see that there's a couple of rocks at the start. It's a pretty janky entry if you ask me. And then once I really dialed in getting over the log, Louise really challenged me to turn uphill between those two trees, very similar to a trials gate. But initially when Louise had said that we're gonna hit this log, in my experience, I've found that the more complex a maneuver becomes, the harder it becomes to understand every single little detail that goes into it, because there's so many little things that all have to come together that it starts to become more about feel. And then there are a couple things that can adjust from there, but really it comes down to your ability to combine the basics together. So instead of asking Louise to explain to me every single little thing that she was doing, I asked her to just hit the log so that I could get this video. And then once she came back from hitting the log, the two of us sat down and really went through the little details and started comparing them to the runs that I had and seeing what was really missing and what needed to change based off of her videos and my videos. So the rest of this video, we're going to be going through and comparing so that you can understand what you're looking for when you see a pro or someone else do a move that you want to do, and how you can compare your videos to the skill that you're trying to replicate. So let's break it down. The very first thing that I noticed when I went back and watched this video with Louise was where she picked up her front tire. As I was watching this, I noticed that she actually used this rock down here to lift her front tire for her. She gave it a little bit of throttle, but there wasn't a whole lot of power stored up. So it wasn't this big like clutch windup. She definitely had the clutch out and it gave it a little burp of throttle, but it wasn't this huge store and release of power for that first initial lift. And when I showed it to her, she said she's always looking for something like that to lift her front tire for her. Now, when it comes to lifting your front tire that much earlier, it also gives you that much more time to build up power in your motor for that second burst. It gives you way more time to get your body in position for the compression on the log. It just ultimately gives you more time to process what's happening. So now I have a baseline of a couple of things that I'm really looking for when I go to hit this log. So let's check out my first attempt. Alright, on first glance, you might think, oh, that's not too bad, you made it up and over. The other side was a little wonky, right? I slid out, but let's really take a closer look at what's going on. The first thing I'm going to be looking for is where I lifted my front tire. Now, remember, Louise used this rock to lift her front tire for her, and while it might look like that I lifted my front tire off of that rock, I'm actually in between the two rocks. So I worked a little bit harder to lift that front end, and I kind of have some trust issues when it comes to lifting my front end, so I kind of overcompensated a little bit because I didn't use that rock. And you'll notice my front tire almost missed the log completely. I kind of just grazed the top of it. Versus if we go back and watch Louise's run, you can see that she actually drives her front tire into the log, and that kind of helps her go through the log versus kind of, if you watch my video, you see I got kind of a harsh slap back down. You can tell it was kind of awkward for me. I wasn't very planted when I went to go take off into that corner. Versus Louise, she was very smooth and controlled in the way that her bike came down off of the log. Her rear tire stayed planted to the log versus mine, which just kind of rebounded off of it. Now for my second run, you can see I'm still lifting my front tire a little late. I'm still just grazing the top of the log, but now I'm really focusing on the body movements and understanding the timing of the body movements once the front tire is in the air in time with the delivery of the power in order to create that rear wheel lift. So let's take a look at Louise's movements. The first thing we see is that she doesn't do this huge compression to get her initial wheel lift. She just drops her knees just a little bit into that rock, and really the rock does most of the compression for her, and that gives her the ability to not have to move so much on the bike to make her second compression. If she had thrown her weight all the way back, she'd have to move a heck of a lot farther onto the bike to get up to the front to get that secondary compression. Then the next thing we notice is once she does that compression, she doesn't throw her weight back, she jumps vertical up, and that allows her to unweight the rear tire in time with the release of the clutch. So what's really happening is she's really driving that rear tire into the ground so that she gets maximum grip as she releases that clutch. So she gets that maximum traction, that maximum dig into the ground, and that springs her up, directly up. Versus you'll notice in my example, I don't really compress into the pegs, which means I can't really jump up. Instead, I just kind of move my body forward once I hit the log, which is a totally viable option in this case, but it's not quite what we were trying to accomplish here in this particular instance. The other thing to note is that there's a slight delay between when you release the clutch and when that power actually goes to the rear tire, but you'll also notice that there's a slight delay between when you're done compressing on the pegs and when your suspension is done compressing into the ground. So you'll notice that even though Louise has finished her compression and she's actually on the way up, she releases the clutch right when the suspension has maxed out its compression. This is kind of where I was talking about those little details start to really muddle the works, if you will. If you're really trying to look for an exact science on how to ride a dirt bike, at a certain point, it becomes a little hard to understand because that delay in those controls depends on every single person's bike, and there's no way to explain the feeling of being able to understand when your tire is going to engage, how your suspension maxes out, how your direct inputs into the bike interpret what the bike does. So this is where playing around and experimenting becomes really, really important when you're trying to learn certain skills. Because once you develop this feel and this understanding, it becomes a lot easier to be able to implement it once you start trying to build complex skills based off of those little basic skills. And this is where I think it's really important to understand what you're trying to do. Now, 2 years ago, if I had been trying this, I would have been like, sweet, I made it over the log. That's all I wanted to do. But no longer is that the case, right? I see Louise, and as you've heard throughout this entire video, we've really picked apart what it is that she's doing and how I'm trying to replicate it. So now it comes down to the finer things, where I'm placing my front wheel. Am I getting that rear tire lift? Is my body moving the way that Louise's is moving? I have homework of 5 or 6 things just off of the 2 things that we picked apart in this video. And I could keep going, but this video is getting a little long. So this is why I think it's so important to not only get training, even as a coach myself, I still think it's so important to go get training from more advanced riders and to really know where you're getting your knowledge from as well. Really think to yourself, is this a rider that I want to replicate while you're trying to replicate what it is that they're doing? If you don't like their riding style, try and see if there's some other riders out there that really mesh with what it is that you're trying to do. Like I myself learned a couple of things from Louise's clinic beyond just this log. The way she talked about wheelies was in a way that I hadn't heard before, and I jived with it really well. I actually really appreciated her input and her perspective on how to lift your front wheel, because it was something that I hadn't heard before, and it really jived with me. I really liked it. But in that regard, she has an incredible foundational clinic for beginners if you're still relatively new to riding and you want to get into technical riding. Maybe you're not even crossing your first log yet, Good news, Louise's class is built for that. I was the only person at Louise's class that was working on that log, and that's totally okay. She has a brilliant understanding of being able to make sure that everybody is entertained no matter what the skill level is. And on that note, Louise is coming out to the Splat Motor Ranch, the place where I host all of my trainings when I'm not on tour. We're hosting her out for a women's only and a co-ed event in February 21st and the 22nd, and for that women's only day, Splat Moto is hosting a significant other trail ride. So if you know anybody, or if you want to come get a training with Louise, if that's on your bucket list, make sure to come out. We got places to stay, we got bikes to rent. No excuses this winter, you guys. Let's really work on our basics, let's brush it up. Let's get some videos of a pro that you want to replicate, like Louise. Take it home for your own homework. Let me tell you, even though I still don't work on this log, I have plenty to work on from her video alone. So don't knock the cost of getting to ride with somebody in person for a couple of hours. Even if you feel like you can't do the drill that they showed you, you have the videos of them doing the drill for you to go home and practice, and there's so much value in that, it's insane. So I really hope that this video helped you guys. Let me know in the comments how you like to learn, and if you found this video helpful, and if it kind of opened your eyes into some of the things that you would look for while you're riding. And drop down in the comments below, have you ever taken a clinic with somebody? Who was it? What did you think? What was one thing that you learned? But that's all for this week's video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.